The interview had been a disaster from the moment Jennifer Hayes stepped into the glass-walled conference room on the 42nd floor. She'd arrived 15 minutes early, despite the chaos of her morning. Her 6-year-old daughter, Amy, had spilled orange juice all over her only professional blouse, forcing Jennifer to change into a navy sweater that didn't quite match her gray skirt. The babysitter had been late, traffic had been worse than usual, and by the time she'd reached Sterling Industries headquarters in downtown Chicago, her carefully rehearsed answers had started to blur together in her mind. Now, sitting across from 3 stone-faced executives, Jennifer felt every ounce of her preparation crumbling. The lead interviewer, a sharp-featured woman named Patricia Drummond, had spent the last 20 minutes picking apart Jennifer's resume with surgical precision. "You've had 4 different positions in the past 6 years," Patricia observed, her pen tapping against the mahogany table. "That's quite a bit of movement for someone applying to be our Director of Community Outreach." Jennifer's hands tightened in her lap. She'd known this question would come up. The truth was complicated. Each job change had been necessary, dictated by Amy's needs. The first position had offered no flexibility when Amy started kindergarten. The second had required travel Jennifer simply couldn't manage as a single parent. The third had been eliminated during company downsizing. Each transition was strategic, Jennifer began, her voice steadier than she felt. "I've consistently sought positions where I could maximize my impact on community development while what?" Patricia interrupted. "While maintaining the kind of commitment we need, Sterling Industries requires dedication, Ms. Hayes. Our Community Outreach Director will be the face of our philanthropic initiatives. That means evening galas, weekend charity events, early morning breakfast meetings with donors. Can you honestly tell us you can handle that kind of schedule?" The question hung in the air like an accusation. Jennifer felt heat rising to her cheeks. She wanted to explain that she'd arranged for extended childcare, that her neighbor Mrs. Chen had agreed to help with Amy, that she'd planned for every contingency. But the way Patricia was looking at her, with that mixture of skepticism and barely concealed disdain, made Jennifer's carefully prepared response die in her throat. "I understand the requirements," Jennifer said quietly, "and I'm prepared to meet them. Are you?" The question came from Marcus Webb, one of the other interviewers, a man in his 50s with reading glasses perched on his nose. "Because your application mentions you're a single parent. I'm sure you understand our concern about divided loyalties." Jennifer's breath caught. Divided loyalties. As if loving her daughter somehow made her incapable of professional excellence. As if the sleepless nights she'd spent mastering grant writing, the courses she'd taken online after Amy went to bed, the weekends she'd volunteered at community centers to build her experience, as if none of that mattered because she had a child to care for. "My personal circumstances have never interfered with my professional performance," Jennifer said, struggling to keep the edge out of her voice. "If you look at my track record, you'll see that I've exceeded goals in every position I've held. I increased community engagement by 40% at my last organization, secured over $2 million in grants, and—" "Yes, we've seen your accomplishments," Patricia cut in. "But past performance isn't always indicative of future results, especially when circumstances change. Sterling Industries is not like your previous employers. We're a multi-billion-dollar corporation with a reputation to uphold. We need someone who can drop everything at a moment's notice, someone without complications." The word landed like a slap. Complications. That's what Amy was to these people, a complication, an inconvenience, an obstacle to Jennifer's professional worth. Jennifer felt something crack inside her chest. She'd faced rejection before, had developed a thick skin over the years of juggling motherhood and career ambitions. But this wasn't just rejection. This was dismissal of everything she'd worked for, everything she'd sacrificed. She thought of the countless times she'd proven herself, only to be overlooked because she didn't fit someone's narrow definition of the ideal employee. "I see," Jennifer said, her voice hollow. She stood up, gathering her portfolio and purse with hands that trembled slightly. "Thank you for your time." Patricia looked momentarily surprised. "We haven't finished the interview, Ms. Hayes." "Yes, you have." Jennifer met the woman's gaze directly. "You finished it the moment you decided that being a mother makes me less qualified than someone without children. You're not looking for the best candidate. You're looking for someone who fits your prejudiced idea of what dedication looks like." Marcus Webb shifted uncomfortably in his seat. The third interviewer, a younger man who hadn't spoken throughout the entire process, stared down at his notepad. Jennifer turned toward the door, her heart pounding. She'd just torpedoed any chance of getting this job, but she couldn't bring herself to care anymore. Some environments were toxic, and she'd rather struggle to pay rent than work for people who saw her daughter as a liability. The conference room door clicked shut behind her, and Jennifer walked quickly down the corridor toward the elevators, her eyes stinging with frustrated tears she refused to let fall. Not here. Not where anyone could see her break. She jabbed the elevator button repeatedly, a childish gesture that gave her some small sense of control. The doors opened immediately, a small mercy, and she stepped inside, pressing the button for the lobby. As the elevator began its descent, Jennifer leaned against the cool metal wall and closed her eyes. She'd been so hopeful about this position. Sterling Industries was known for its community initiatives, and the salary would have finally given her and Amy some breathing room. She could have afforded a better apartment, maybe even saved for Amy's college fund. Now she was back to square one, with rent due in 2 weeks, and exactly $300 in her checking account. The elevator chimed at the lobby level, and Jennifer straightened her shoulders, wiping quickly at her eyes. She wouldn't let Amy see her defeated. 6-year-olds shouldn't have to worry about their mother's job prospects or whether they'd make rent. Jennifer had always found a way before, and she'd find a way now. She walked across the marble lobby, her footsteps echoing in the cavernous space. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the Sterling Industries logo etched into the wall, a phoenix rising from flames, all gleaming gold and corporate symbolism. Some phoenix, Jennifer thought bitterly. More like a gilded cage. She pushed through the revolving doors and stepped out onto Michigan Avenue, where the autumn wind hit her immediately, cutting through her inadequate sweater. She'd left her coat in the conference room, she realized. Of course she had. Jennifer paused on the sidewalk, debating whether to go back for it. It was her only decent coat, but the thought of facing those 3 people again, of walking back into that building where she'd been judged and found wanting. Ms. Hayes. The voice came from behind her, sharp and urgent. Jennifer turned, expecting to see a security guard with her forgotten coat. Instead, she saw a man in an immaculate charcoal suit running toward her, his expression intense and completely unexpected. The man running toward her wasn't just any employee. Jennifer recognized him from the massive portrait hanging in Sterling Industries' lobby. Daniel Whitmore, the CEO himself, was sprinting down Michigan Avenue after her, dodging pedestrians with the kind of urgency usually reserved for emergencies. Jennifer stood frozen on the sidewalk, utterly confused. Why would the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar corporation be chasing after a failed job candidate? Ms. Hayes, please wait, Daniel said as he reached her, slightly breathless. He was younger than she'd expected from his portrait. Maybe 40, with dark hair touched with gray at the temples, and striking blue eyes that were currently fixed on her with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. I left my coat, Jennifer stammered, her mind scrambling for an explanation. But you didn't need to. I mean, someone could have just... This isn't about your coat, Daniel interrupted. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture that seemed uncharacteristically uncertain for a man of his position. I need to apologize. What happened in that conference room was completely unacceptable. Jennifer blinked. You were in the conference room? I was observing from my office. We have a video feed for executive-level interviews. He looked genuinely uncomfortable now. It's standard procedure for director positions. I watched the entire interview, and I'm appalled by how you were treated. The wind whipped around them, and Jennifer shivered involuntarily. Daniel immediately shrugged off his suit jacket and held it out to her. Please, he said, you're freezing. Jennifer wanted to refuse. Accepting his jacket felt like accepting charity, and she'd had enough of being seen as someone who needed saving. But her practical side won out. She was freezing, and pride wouldn't keep her warm on the train ride home. Thank you, she said quietly, slipping into the jacket. It was warm from his body heat, and smelled faintly of cedar and something expensive. Patricia Drummond will be formally reprimanded, Daniel continued. Her line of questioning was discriminatory and completely contrary to Sterling Industries' values. I don't tolerate that kind of bias in my company. Your company has policies, Jennifer said, unable to keep the bitterness from her voice. But policies don't change attitudes. Those 3 people in that room believed every word they said. They genuinely think that being a single mother makes me unreliable. They're wrong. The simple, definitive statement caught Jennifer off guard. Daniel held her gaze, and she saw something there. Not pity, but what looked like genuine respect. I read your file thoroughly before the interview, he continued. Your accomplishments are remarkable. You increased community engagement by 40% at Riverside Foundation, while working with a budget that was a fraction of what we allocate. You secured $2 million in grants during a recession when most nonprofits were hemorrhaging funding, and you did all of that while raising a daughter on your own. That's not a complication, Ms. Hayes. That's exceptional time management and dedication. Jennifer felt her throat tighten. She couldn't remember the last time someone in a position of power had acknowledged her work, without the inevitable but that followed. I appreciate you saying that, she managed. But it doesn't change the outcome of the interview. Actually, it does. Daniel straightened, and Jennifer saw the corporate executive emerge, confident, decisive, accustomed to getting what he wanted. I want to offer you the position. Jennifer stared at him. What? The Director of Community Outreach position. I'm offering it to you right now. Salary is $140,000 annually, full benefits including comprehensive health insurance, 4 weeks paid vacation, and flexible working arrangements. You'd have a team of 5 reporting to you, an office on the 40th floor, and complete autonomy over Sterling Industries' philanthropic initiatives. It was everything Jennifer had dreamed of. The salary alone would transform her and Amy's lives. They could move out of their cramped 1-bedroom apartment. Amy could go to a better school. Jennifer could stop lying awake at night calculating whether they could afford both groceries and electricity. But something held her back. Why? Jennifer asked. Is this guilt? Because if you're offering me this job because you feel bad about what happened up there, I'm offering you this job because you're the best candidate I've seen in 6 months of searching, Daniel said firmly. I've interviewed 15 people for this position. Most of them had impressive credentials and said all the right things, but none of them had your track record of actual results. None of them showed the kind of strategic thinking evident in your grant proposals. And frankly, none of them had the courage to walk out of an interview when they were being disrespected. Jennifer's eyes narrowed. So you like that I called out discrimination? I like that you have a backbone, Daniel corrected. Community outreach isn't about smiling and writing checks. It's about challenging systems, pushing for real change, and standing up to people who'd rather maintain the status quo. Based on what I just witnessed, you're more than capable of all 3. A taxi honked nearby, and the noise seemed to break the strange bubble that had formed around them on the busy sidewalk. Jennifer became acutely aware that she was standing on Michigan Avenue wearing the CEO's jacket, discussing a job offer that seemed too good to be true. I need time to think about it, she said, though every logical part of her brain was screaming at her to say yes immediately. Daniel looked surprised, then something like respect flickered across his features. Of course. Take the weekend. Come by Monday morning, my office, 9 o'clock. We can discuss the details and you can give me your answer then. He pulled a business card from his wallet and handed it to her. The card was simple, heavy cream cardstock with embossed lettering. Daniel Whitmore, Chief Executive Officer, and a direct phone number. If you have any questions before Monday, call me. That's my personal cell. Jennifer took the card, feeling like she'd stepped into some alternate reality. CEOs didn't chase failed candidates down the street. They didn't offer jobs on sidewalks, or give out their personal numbers. Mr. Whitmore, I have to ask, is this really about my qualifications, or is there something else going on here? Daniel met her eyes, and for a moment, Jennifer saw something vulnerable beneath the executive polish. 6 years ago, my sister was interviewing for positions after her divorce. She's brilliant. Harvard MBA, 10 years of marketing experience. But she had 2 kids, and every interviewer saw that as a liability, rather than evidence of her ability to handle multiple competing priorities. She ended up taking a job that paid half what she was worth because it was the only place that didn't penalize her for being a mother. He paused, his jaw tightening. I watched what that did to her confidence, her finances, her sense of self-worth. I swore then that if I ever had the power to change that pattern, I would. So yes, this is personal. But that doesn't make you less qualified. It makes me more aware of how often we overlook qualified people because of irrelevant biases. Jennifer felt something shift in her chest. This wasn't pity or charity. This was something more complex. Recognition, perhaps, or solidarity. "I'll be there Monday morning," she said. 9 o'clock. Daniel's smile was genuine, transforming his entire face. "I look forward to it. And Ms. Hayes, bring your daughter if you need to. I mean that. We have a children's center on the 3rd floor. It was my first initiative when I became CEO. Most people don't know it exists because we don't advertise it, but it's there for exactly this reason." He turned to walk back toward the building, then paused. "Your coat is at the reception desk." I had someone retrieve it from the conference room. Jennifer watched him disappear through the revolving doors, his confident stride so different from his earlier urgency. She looked down at the business card in her hand, then at the jacket she was still wearing. Her phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Chen. "Amy's asking when you'll be home. Interview go okay?" Jennifer smiled, typing back quickly. "Better than I could have imagined. On my way now." As she walked toward the train station, Jennifer allowed herself a moment of hope. Maybe, just maybe, things were finally about to change. But even as excitement bubbled in her chest, a small voice of caution whispered in the back of her mind. Daniel Whitmore seemed genuine, but he was still a CEO worth billions. People like him didn't usually chase people like her down streets without reason. What if there was more to this job offer than he was saying? What if Monday brought complications she couldn't foresee? Jennifer shook off the doubts. She'd spent 6 years being cautious, playing it safe, settling for less than she deserved. It was time to take a chance. She just hoped it wouldn't turn out to be a mistake. Monday morning arrived with the kind of crisp autumn weather that made Chicago feel alive. Jennifer stood in front of her bathroom mirror, adjusting the collar of her best blouse for the 3rd time. Amy sat on the closed toilet lid, swinging her legs and watching her mother with the solemn intensity only 6-year-olds could muster. "You look pretty, Mommy," Amy said. "Thank you, sweetheart." Jennifer turned away from the mirror, crouching down to Amy's level. "Remember what we talked about? You're going to spend the morning at the children's center, and if everything goes well, you might be going there more often." Amy's brown eyes, so much like her father's, though Jennifer tried not to think about that, widened with curiosity. "Will there be other kids?" "Lots of them. And toys and books. And I heard they even have an art room." The truth was, Jennifer had done extensive research over the weekend. She'd called the number on Daniel's card Saturday evening, half expecting to get voicemail. Instead, he'd answered on the 2nd ring, and they'd spent 45 minutes discussing the position. He'd been patient with her questions, transparent about expectations, and surprisingly easy to talk to. He'd also insisted she bring Amy to see the children's center before making her final decision. Now, standing in Sterling Industries' lobby with Amy's small hand clasped in hers, Jennifer felt her courage wavering. The security guard directed them to a private elevator, and when the doors opened on the 3rd floor, Jennifer understood why Daniel had been so insistent. The children's center was nothing like she'd expected. Instead of institutional beige walls and generic toys, she found herself in a space that looked like a cross between a high-end preschool and a creative wonderland. Large windows flooded the area with natural light. Reading nooks were tucked into corners with plush cushions and overflowing bookshelves. An art studio occupied one section, complete with easels and a wall displaying children's paintings. In the center, kids of various ages played under the watchful supervision of qualified educators. "Mrs. Hayes?" A woman in her 50s approached, her warm smile genuine. "I'm Dorothy Brennan, the center's director. Mr. Whitmore asked me to give you and Amy a tour." The next 20 minutes passed in a blur of introductions and explanations. Amy, initially shy, gradually warmed up when Dorothy showed her the reading corner and introduced her to a girl her age named Kayla. By the time Jennifer needed to leave for her meeting with Daniel, Amy was already engrossed in a picture book, barely noticing her mother's departure. "She'll be fine," Dorothy assured Jennifer. "Take all the time you need." The executive floor was a different world entirely. Jennifer's heels clicked against polished marble, as an assistant led her past offices with glass walls and minimalist decor. They stopped at a corner office with a view of Lake Michigan that probably cost more than Jennifer's annual salary. Daniel stood as she entered, coming around his massive desk to shake her hand. He was in a navy suit today, crisp white shirt, no tie, the kind of casual formality that spoke of absolute confidence. "Jennifer, thank you for coming." He gestured to a sitting area by the windows, away from the formal desk. "How's Amy? Already making friends, apparently? Your center is impressive." "It should be. I spent 2 years fighting the board to approve the budget." Daniel settled into a chair across from her. "They thought it was a waste of resources. I thought it was an investment in keeping talented people who happen to have children." Jennifer studied him, trying to reconcile the powerful CEO with the man who'd chased her down Michigan Avenue. "Can I ask you something? Anything. Why did you really start that center? The truth, not the PR version." Daniel was quiet for a moment, his fingers steepled under his chin. "My sister Caroline, the one I mentioned, she eventually left the corporate world entirely. Said it was impossible to balance the demands of motherhood with the expectations of her employers. She's brilliant, and the business world lost her because we couldn't figure out how to be flexible." He leaned forward, his expression intense. "But that's not the whole story. When I was 12, my mother was a single parent. My father had died in a construction accident, and she worked 3 jobs to keep us afloat. I watched her sacrifice everything, her health, her dreams, her dignity sometimes, because employers saw her situation as a weakness rather than evidence of her strength." Jennifer felt her throat tighten. "I'm sorry. Don't be. It taught me what really matters." Daniel stood, walking to the window. "Sterling Industries was my grandfather's company. When I inherited control 6 years ago, I inherited a culture that valued profit over people. I've been trying to change that, piece by piece. The Children's Center was just the beginning." He turned back to face her. "Which brings me to why you're really here. I need someone who understands what it's like to fight for every opportunity, someone who won't accept the status quo just because it's easier. Our community outreach has been superficial, charity galas that make us look good without creating real change. I want to transform that, but I need the right person to lead the effort." Jennifer's heart raced. This was more than a job offer. It was a chance to actually make a difference on a scale she'd never imagined possible. "What did you have in mind?" she asked. For the next hour, they discussed vision and strategy. Daniel described his frustration with performative philanthropy, his desire to create programs with measurable impact. Jennifer found herself opening up about her experiences, the barriers she'd encountered, the solutions she'd envisioned, but never had resources to implement. They were so engrossed in conversation that neither noticed the time until Daniel's assistant knocked softly on the door. "Mr. Whitmore, you have the board meeting in 10 minutes. Daniel glanced at his watch, surprised. "Already?" He looked at Jennifer. "I'm sorry. I need to—" "Of course." Jennifer stood, gathering her portfolio. "I should check on Amy anyway. Wait." Daniel reached into his desk drawer, pulling out a folder. "Before you go, I need you to understand something. This isn't just about filling a position. If you accept this job, you'll have enemies. There are board members who oppose the Children's Center, executives who think community outreach is a waste of money. Patricia Drummond wasn't acting alone. Her attitude reflects a larger culture I'm still fighting to change." He handed her the folder. Inside were detailed financial projections, organizational charts, and what looked like meeting minutes. "That's from last quarter's board meeting," Daniel continued. 3 board members argued we should eliminate the community outreach department entirely, redirect those funds to shareholder dividends. I blocked them, but barely. They're looking for any excuse to prove me wrong. Jennifer's stomach tightened. "So I'd be walking into a political minefield." "Yes. And if you fail, they'll use it as ammunition not just against you, but against every initiative I've tried to implement. The Children's Center, flexible working policies, parental leave extensions, all of it would be on the chopping block." The weight of it settled on Jennifer's shoulders. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about every working parent who needed these programs, every person who didn't fit the traditional corporate mold. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. "You could have just offered me the job and let me figure it out." Because you deserve the truth, and because I need to know you're going into this with your eyes open. Daniel's gaze was steady, unflinching. I believe you can do this, Jennifer. But I need you to believe it too. Jennifer looked down at the folder in her hands, then out at the lake beyond the windows. 6 years ago, when Amy's father had walked out 2 months before she was born, Jennifer had made a promise to herself. She would never again let fear stop her from fighting for what she deserved. I'll take the job, she said quietly. Then, louder, with more conviction, I'll take the job, Mr. Whitmore. And I'll make sure those board members regret ever doubting you. Daniel's smile was brilliant. Daniel, if we're going to fight battles together, you should call me Daniel. Jennifer then, not Ms. Hayes. They shook hands, and Jennifer felt the electricity of the moment. A partnership forming, a challenge accepted, a future taking shape. But as she left his office and headed back to the children's center, Jennifer couldn't shake a nagging feeling. Daniel had been completely transparent about the professional obstacles she'd face. What he hadn't mentioned was the personal complication already brewing beneath the surface. She'd felt it during their conversation. Moments when his attention lingered a fraction too long. When the discussion felt less like a business meeting, and more like two people discovering they understood each other in ways that had nothing to do with work. Jennifer pushed the thought away firmly. She was here to do a job, to build a better life for Amy. Getting emotionally entangled with her boss, especially one who was a billionaire CEO, was a complication she absolutely could not afford. When she reached the children's center, she found Amy covered in finger paint, laughing with 3 other children as they created a massive mural on butcher paper. Mommy, look, Amy called out, her face glowing with happiness Jennifer hadn't seen in months. We're making a rainbow. Jennifer's heart clenched. This joy on her daughter's face, this sense of belonging, this was worth any risk. She just hoped she wasn't making the biggest mistake of her life. 3 months into her position at Sterling Industries, Jennifer had learned several crucial things. First, Daniel's warnings about board opposition hadn't been exaggerated. If anything, he'd understated the problem. Second, transforming a corporate culture was infinitely harder than she'd imagined. And third, working closely with Daniel Whitmore was becoming increasingly complicated in ways that had nothing to do with budget meetings or strategic planning. It was a Friday evening in January, and Jennifer sat in her office reviewing proposals for a new mentorship program connecting Sterling employees with at-risk youth. Most of the building had emptied hours ago, but she'd stayed late to finish the presentation for Monday's board meeting. Amy was at a sleepover with Kayla from the Children's Center. Their first real friendship had blossomed into weekly playdates and shared secrets. A knock on her door frame made Jennifer look up. Daniel stood there, loosened tie and rolled sleeves suggesting he'd also been working late. You're still here, he said, not quite making it a question. Big presentation Monday. I want it perfect. Jennifer gestured to the spreadsheets covering her desk. These numbers need to show undeniable ROI, or the board will tear the program apart before it even launches. Daniel walked into her office, studying the materials she'd prepared. This is excellent work, Jennifer, but you know the board will find fault regardless. That's what they do. Then I'll make it impossible for them to dismiss. Jennifer rubbed her tired eyes. I'm not giving them ammunition to shut down another program. Over the past 3 months, she'd fought for every initiative. A partnership with local schools, expanded community grants, volunteer programs for employees. She'd won some battles and lost others, but each victory felt hard-earned and precarious. Daniel perched on the edge of her desk, a casual gesture that had become familiar. You're too hard on yourself. The employee volunteer program launched last month has already exceeded participation goals by 30%. That's one success against how many setbacks? Jennifer shook her head. Patricia Drummond convinced 2 department heads to refuse participation. The marketing team still treats community outreach like an inconvenient obligation. And don't get me started on how procurement dragged their feet on approving vendor contracts for the youth center renovation. Patricia won't be a problem much longer, Daniel said quietly. Jennifer's head snapped up. What does that mean? She's been offered a position at another company. She'll be leaving at the end of the month. You pushed her out. I gave her a choice. Change her attitude or find somewhere else to work. She chose the latter. Daniel's expression was unreadable. I won't tolerate people who undermine what we're trying to build here. Jennifer should have felt vindicated. Patricia had been her most vocal critic, the one who'd questioned every budget line and spread rumors that Jennifer's flexible schedule proved working. Mothers couldn't handle executive positions. But instead, Jennifer felt uneasy. Daniel, you can't fire everyone who disagrees with your vision. That's not changing culture. That's forcing compliance. I'm protecting you, Daniel said. And there was something in his voice that made Jennifer's pulse quicken. She was sabotaging your work. I can handle criticism. I've been handling it my entire career. Jennifer stood, putting distance between them. What I can't handle is the appearance that I'm only successful because the CEO is fighting my battles for me. The tension in the room shifted, becoming something neither of them wanted to acknowledge. Over 3 months of working closely together, of strategy sessions that ran late, of shared frustrations and victories, something had developed between them. Jennifer had felt it in the way Daniel's hand would linger on her shoulder when he looked at her presentations, in how their conversations drifted from professional to personal, in the moments when their eyes met and held a beat too long. That's not why you're successful, Daniel said softly. You're successful because you're brilliant at what you do. Because you care about outcomes more than optics. Because you've created programs that are actually changing lives. He stood, moving closer. The youth mentorship program you designed? I got a letter last week from a 17-year-old kid named Marcus. He's been paired with one of our engineers. He wrote that for the first time, he believes college might actually be possible for him. That's because of you, Jennifer. Not me, not the company's money. You. Jennifer's throat tightened. Daniel, we can't what? He was close enough now that she could see the gold flecks in his blue eyes. Can't acknowledge that this stopped being just professional months ago? You're my boss, Jennifer said, even as her heart hammered against her ribs. I'm a single mother with a daughter to support. I can't risk this job, this stability for what? For the possibility of something real? Daniel's hand came up, almost touching her face before he caught himself and let it drop. I know the risks, Jennifer. I know what the board would say, how it would look. But I also know that I've never met anyone who challenges me the way you do, who sees the world the way you do. Jennifer wanted to step back, to maintain the professional distance she'd carefully constructed. But she was tired of always being careful, always protecting herself, always choosing safety over possibility. My marriage ended because my ex-husband couldn't handle having a wife who was ambitious, she said quietly. He wanted someone who'd make him the center of her universe. When I couldn't be that person, when I chose my career and our daughter over his ego, he left. I'm not him, Daniel said. No, you're worse. Jennifer's laugh was shaky. You're a billionaire CEO. I'm a single mother who was struggling to pay rent 4 months ago. The power dynamic alone is exactly why I've been fighting this for months, Daniel interrupted. I know what it looks like. I know the assumptions people would make, but I also know that what I feel for you has nothing to do with power or position. It has everything to do with the fact that you walked out of an interview rather than compromise your dignity. That you fight for programs you believe in even when it's politically dangerous. That you're an incredible mother who taught your daughter to be brave and kind. You barely know Amy, Jennifer protested weakly. I know she draws pictures of rainbows for the other kids in the center when they're sad. I know she asked Dorothy if you could adopt Kayla as a sister because she doesn't want her friend to be lonely. I know she told me last week that her mommy is a superhero because you help people who need help. Daniel's smile was tender. She's remarkable, just like her mother. Jennifer felt tears prick her eyes. This is a terrible idea. Probably the worst I've ever had, Daniel agreed. But I'm tired of pretending I don't feel this way. I'm tired of business meetings where all I can think about is how your eyes light up when you talk about program outcomes. I'm tired of going home to an empty penthouse and wishing you were there to tell me about Amy's day. If this goes wrong, Jennifer started. Then we'll handle it like adults, Daniel said. But Jennifer, what if it goes right? What if this is exactly what we both need but have been too afraid to reach for? Jennifer thought about all the times she'd chosen safety over risk, all the opportunities she'd passed up because they seemed too good to be true. She thought about Amy, who deserved to see her mother happy, who deserved to learn that love was worth fighting for. "One dinner," she said finally. "No business talk. Just us. And if it's awkward or weird or proves that this is just proximity and stress, then we go back to being colleagues and nothing more," Daniel finished. "But if it's not, then we figure it out together," Jennifer said. Slowly, carefully. With Amy's well-being as the priority, Daniel's smile transformed his entire face. "I wouldn't want it any other way." He stepped back, professional distance reasserting itself. But his eyes held a warmth that made Jennifer's stomach flip. "There's a small Italian restaurant in Lincoln Park. Amazing food, quiet atmosphere. How about tomorrow night? I can pick you up at 7. "I'll meet you there," Jennifer countered. "I'm not ready for Amy to see us as anything other than co-workers yet." "Fair enough." Daniel pulled out his phone, texting her the address. "And Jennifer? This doesn't change anything at work. You'll still have to fight for every program, still face board opposition. I won't show you favoritism." "Good," Jennifer said firmly. "That's exactly how it should be." After Daniel left, Jennifer sat down at her desk, staring at the address on her phone. She should feel terrified. She was risking everything on a possibility, gambling with her daughter's stability for the chance at happiness. Instead, she felt hopeful. Her phone buzzed with a text from Amy. "Kayla's mom says, can I stay for breakfast too? Please, please, please." Jennifer smiled, typing back, "Yes, but you help clean up." Another text appeared, this one from Daniel. "Looking forward to tomorrow. Sleep well, Jennifer." She allowed herself a moment to just sit with the feeling, the uncertainty, the excitement, the terrifying possibility that maybe, just maybe, she deserved this chance at something wonderful. 6 months ago, she'd walked out of an interview convinced she'd hit rock bottom. Now she had a job she loved, a daughter who was thriving, and the beginning of something that might become more than she'd ever dared to dream. Jennifer looked at the presentation materials spread across her desk. Evidence of battles fought and won, of programs that were changing lives, of a career she'd built through determination and resilience. Whatever happened with Daniel, whatever challenges lay ahead, she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She was done playing small, done accepting less than she deserved, done letting fear make her decisions. Amy had called her a superhero. Maybe it was time Jennifer started believing it herself. She gathered her materials, turned off her office light, and headed home. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new possibilities, new reasons to fight for the life she was building. And for the first time in 6 years, Jennifer couldn't wait to see what came next.